Okay, well, Brittany, let's get going here. So thanks for everyone that's joined us this morning, and also to those who will hopefully be watching this later on the recording who are interested but couldn't make the time. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a resurgence of multiple offers back in the market. We did have a pretty good lull there as the interest rates were rapidly rising. A lot of people put their plans on hold. We saw a decline in prices. And at the beginning of the year, I'd say more so February, we started to see a lot more people come back into the market and new people enter the market. But inventory is still remaining quite low. So we started to see a few multiple offers happen. Nothing crazy over the asking price or anything like that. And then we saw a few more happen. And then they started to just be happening on a regular basis. So we felt it was important to do this webinar. We did do one maybe a year and a half ago, but we wanted to update it. We'll keep this one short and sweet. So we'll try and move quickly. We don't really want to rush through it. It's very important, but we do want to move swiftly to respect your time. So yeah, let's kick things off here. I'm just going to share my screen. So Brittany, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany White. I'm an advisor at Engel & Volkers, Vancouver. And I've been a realtor since 2008. So seen lots of different markets in these past 15 plus years.
Perfect. And my name is Glenn Feldstein with Engel & Volkers, as is Brittany. And I've been a licensed realtor since 2005. So throughout my whole career, I've seen multiple offers. So this isn't anything new, but we do have the experience. We've been through several transactions, both representing the buyer and seller. So what we would like to cover today is the most important thing that we do want to cover today is what to expect on the offer day or just leading up to that, which we feel isn't really talked about that much, but we'll cruise through some strategy for buyers, sellers, then what to expect for buyers and sellers. We'll also talk about backup offers, which are very popular right now.
Yes.
And then some things to ponder, some things to consider, and a Q&A. If at any point throughout this, if you do have a question, just drop it in the Q&A and we'll try to keep our eye on it. But we'll certainly get to any questions. So I'll kick things off here talking about the strategy for buyers. And essentially what I want to talk about is viewing the property right away. So as soon as a property hits the MLS and you see it in your email or you see it online, you're going to want to see it right away to give yourself more time to do your due diligence before the offer date. So, us as realtors, we see a listing come on the market and we go straight to the document section, and there's a document there, a form there. And a seller, if their strategy is to list for multiple offers, there's going to be a document there that shows the offer date. So then we just act with a little more urgency. Talk about mortgage confirmation, financing condition, and document review, and the home inspection. So these are all things that a buyer you're going to want to do before the offer date. So as I mentioned, it's important to view the property right away as soon as it hits the market. Again, you're just going to have a longer runway to do your homework before the offer date. So most realtors are going to list on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and have the offer date on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So Brittany and I, we like to go Tuesday or Wednesday list, and then Tuesday or Wednesday for the offer date, simply to give people a couple extra more banking days for anybody that could only see it on the weekend or something like that. But you're usually going to have, the sooner you see the property, the more runway you're going to have to do your due diligence. And the point of doing your due diligence before the offer date is to make a clean offer. So with as few conditions as possible. And if there is no offer date, then you will have beaten the rush and possibly be in a position to make that offer right away. Okay. If you do require financing, it's really important to speak with your mortgage broker about whether you need a financing condition or not. Now, in our experience, or in my experience, if you've got 20% or more to put down, then you're more likely that you can that you can not have a financing condition. I was going to say roll the dice. I mean, there's always that little bit of risk, but if you're working with the right mortgage broker, they're gonna tell you how big of a risk that is or how small of a risk that is. And then again, the document review and inspection. So if regardless of the property, there's going to be some documents that you want to review. If you're purchasing a strata title property, there's going to be a lot more documents that you're going to need to review. So you'll start doing that right away. And this is assuming you want to make an offer on the offer date. You review the documents and book the inspection. So if you see the property, you're like, this is the one for me, book the inspection and request the documents. Okay. So I find a lot of people are surprised when I say, no, let's do the inspection before the offer date. So yes, the seller should allow access for that. Okay. And maybe in a rare occasion, the seller won't, and then they're just going to receive offers that are conditional to an inspection for the most part. But if the seller is doing things correctly, they should be opening up the property for an inspection. So you can do all that ahead of time. Now there is a bit of a gamble there, and this all comes down to the situation, and every situation is a little bit different. So of course, if you book the inspection, you do the inspection and you don't get the property, yes, you've paid $400 to $700 on inspection, depending on the property, and not getting it. So it kind of stings, but it does put you in a better position on the offer date. So strategy for sellers. Britt?
Yeah, so a little bit of a flip side of the strategy for sellers is that we're gonna, touch base on, how do you present your home going to market? So there was a time where, you could put anything and everything on the market, hardly do any touch-up repairs and so forth, and just put it on and you would get so many offers. But now we've got to be a little bit more cognizant of what's happening. So we'll talk a little bit about the touch-ups, the time on the market exposure for showings, and document review, and also allowing buyers to do an inspection. So preparing your property for the market is super important. It's funny, we're going through this, Glenn and I, with 3 different properties right now, just making sure that they're showing their best right before we get our photos and video done. Buyers, when you come in, you're coming in with a mindset. When buyers are walking through, you will like the property, but you're also looking for things wrong. And that's what our brain automatically does and goes, okay, I like it. What can I find wrong about it to know if I like it enough? So we just want to give the opportunity for buyers not to complain about a lot and make sure we do. It could be down to simple things like caulking your bathtub. If there's any little touch-ups of paint you have to do. We just got a whole property fully painted, an apartment that we're about to list. So things like that, that's going to make it look its best before we get professional photos and a professional video. So these are really important steps before putting your home on the market. So for us, professional photography and video is super important. Another thing people tend to forget about across the board, it feels like it should be a must these days, is a floor plan. Buyers need to visualize going through the property, and they can't do that without a floor plan because they want to look at it afterwards, right? They're not going to just go in it and then make an offer right away. Usually it's, going in, having the mindset, looking at it afterwards, going through it, talking about with friends and family and so forth. So there's a few things about strategy for sellers, whether or not you're going to make an offer presentation date or you're not, or you're going to look at offers right away. And it's really dependent on the property itself. Luxury properties, usually we will do more of first come, first serve, depending if we have priced it at a very, very strategic price point. If we have, and we know that we are going to be looking at a couple offers, then we will. But if you are not, then we're still going to do all of these items beforehand before we list. So, but if we are knowing that we are going to be going into a multiple offer situation for you as a seller, we are going to want to put the house on the market, usually Tuesday or Wednesday. It gives people enough time to make those decisions look through the marketing, be able to book an inspection, go through the documents and so forth. We want to give buyers a time to be successful.
Yeah, and
And then
usually we shoot for like a week.
a week
Listed
is
and then a
really
week
good.
later offer day, right?
Yeah, a week is usually really good because it allows more people to come on. Remember, not everybody can get to the property right away. So we want to make sure that people have time to get into the property, make their decision to do an inspection, and get in as many buyers as possible. And that, as a seller's agent, is our number one job. So make sure you open up your property to inspections. I know it's extra time, and if you have kids and so forth, that makes it a little bit more challenging. But know if your result at the end is going to be good, then know that you've done this week and a bit of great amount of showing time that people come in. And then at the end of the day, then you're looking at a few offers and then the process is over. So that's pretty much the process of how it goes through. Sometimes getting your property ready to put on market can sometimes take a week. Sometimes it can take a couple months. So really, we just have to see when we get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we didn't discuss is if you have a tenant. So if you have a tenant, just make sure you're giving them adequate amount of time. Give them enough time. Also, it's nice to sweeten the pot a little bit for them, because remember, they're taking time and cleaning up the property for you, and they're not really getting anything out of it. So it's nice to, look at getting them a gift certificate to a restaurant and so forth, making sure that it's as comfortable as possible, because a lot of people are coming into their home, right? So just make sure you make it worthwhile for them, and make everybody happy. So those are the few tips for sellers to getting ready from point A to point B.
Perfect. So now what to expect for buyers. So this is sort of where one of the things that kind of spurred this webinar for us to do this webinar. And we talk about the process, we talk about tips and strategies, but it's not really ever talked about. I mean, the people that are in it are having the conversations, but we felt that it's more important that people understand what to expect before they're in it. Because while it's happening, like, you've done everything right, you've done everything that that's within your control to make the best offer or to prepare your house the best way and that sort of thing. And that's fine. But then what happens on the offer day, and like what happens leading up to that? So on the offer date, your realtor is going to be first thing in the morning typically, and maybe it's even before the offer date, but you're going to be having a couple check-ins with the listing realtor to say, hey, how many offers are we looking at here? How many offers are you expecting? Now, most people, so with an offer date, you also have an offer time. So the listing realtor is going to specify when the offer day is and what time they want the offers by. So if it's a 4 p.m. deadline or a 5 p.m. deadline, offers can come in at any point. They can come in if it's a Tuesday at 4 p.m., offers can still come in on a Monday, but the deadline is 4 p.m., right? So it's good to check in to find out what the count is, because one thing it changes drastically. We were recently, Galia, who's not with us today, you saw her photo at the beginning there. She's one of our team members, and she was in a competing situation with a buyer a couple weeks ago now. And the listing realtor, I think in the morning, or maybe the day before, it's like, it looks like we'll have 3 offers. Mm-hmm. By the time 3 o'clock hit on the offer day, at 15. Okay.
Yes.
So now, not all those people could actually afford the property, but that's a side point, right? So get the offer count, right? Get a couple check-ins during the day. When you're speaking with the listing realtor, and this can happen anytime, just confirm or ask what the preferred closing dates are of the seller. I mean, it's worth even asking, what's the most important thing to the seller about this? Is it the price? For the most part, it's the price, but is the price, the closing dates, maybe who even buys the property? So just confirm some things with the listing realtor, and submit a cover letter in with your offer as well. Cover letter being something about yourself. In our experience, a lot of our clients are interested in who's buying the property. Right now, it still usually does come down to price and dates, and the amount of conditions or no conditions in an offer and that sort of thing, right? But basically what we're trying to do here is everything possible to put yourself in the best position. So a letter about yourself, and why you like the property in the area, and who you are, can help a little bit, right?
And
Once,
remember, if you are going in between and you have two offers that are so similar, that seller, remember, this is an emotional, this is a big emotional process for a seller as well too. So if you're head to head with another one, sometimes if they do connect with your story, sometimes that can give you the greater edge.
right, exactly. And your realtor is going to be when, like oftentimes as listing realtors, we just get offers sent to us with no, I mean, we get the email, but we don't really get the phone call and that sort of thing. Like, so, we're trying to do everything that we can for our clients when representing the buyer. So we have the offer, we send the offer in by the deadline. We follow the instructions that the listing realtor puts forth to a T. And we follow up with a phone call just to chat about the offer, to chat about our client, to try and see where we might be stacking up and that sort of thing, right? So that, I mean, that's for your realtor. That's not necessarily for a buyer, but these are all things that should be done. And then just be patient for a callback. And this is one of the hardest parts, because you submitted the offer. If there's a 4 p.m. deadline, you submitted the offer on time. You probably signed it the night before, the morning of, or the afternoon of, and it could take hours for the listing realtor to get back to you, right? So reason being, depending on how many offers they have, they're sifting through all the offers and speaking with their client, and that just takes time. So just be patient, and that's generally how things unfold. So some other questions here that kind of tie into some of the points on the previous slide is, how many offers are you expecting? Like one thing that we ask, as we're checking in throughout the day, I mean, I won't in the morning, I won't ask if the listing realtor has any offers in hand, but if we're trying to meet a 4 p.m. deadline, around 3 p.m., I might call back and say, hey, I'm going to have this offer to you real quick. What's the offer count now, right? And they'll tell you, and then I'll say, do you have any offers in hand? And if they say, yeah, we've got a few in hand, then I'll ask, are any of them subject, free, or unconditional? Now, some of these questions, the listing realtor, like, they don't have to answer, but ask because you might gain some information. It's also important for us to know how they handle multiple offers. Like Brittany and I have a specific way when we're representing the seller of how we handle multiple offers, but not everybody does it the same way. So it's important to understand how they do that. And we also want to know is if the listing realtor is going to give people a chance to better their offer. So meaning, if we are coming in at a price that we think is great and an offer that we think is great, and we valued the property based on the market, but we've still got a little bit left in the tank, then it's important to know if the listing realtor is just going to pick the best offer right out of the gate, or if they're going to go back to everybody that's made a solid offer and say, hey, look, now's your chance to improve your offer. If you don't, we're going with somebody else. So we want to know that, because some realtors will just, and it's ultimately it's up to the seller, but the listing realtor is advising the seller. So, but some sellers just want to reward the person who came in with the highest and cleanest offer. And they say, well, this person clearly wants it. So, but it's important for us to know, right? And then again, I mentioned before, in terms of the offer, what's the most important thing for the seller? So again, the listing realtor doesn't have to answer these questions. They're, for the most part, we're trying to be very fair to everyone. We're not trying to play favorites by any means. So we don't really want to talk too much about what the other offers are, right? Because that's not being fair to those people who have made those offers, right? But there are some questions where you can gain some information, and the listing realtor is trying to do the best for their seller and trying to get them the best offers. So in some cases, some of this information will be helpful to get the seller the best price. So, and then other things, I've got this intangible here. Is your realtor likable? So, I mean, people like to do business with people they like. And again, this is not favorites. Like if a very unfriendly and rude realtor ends up coming with the best offer for my seller, the seller is likely going to take that. Okay. But there are certain things that we can do to befriend the listing realtor, make their job easier, show that we've done our homework. If we have questions, show that we've done our homework and all that sort of stuff. And this is all helping them kind of like us a little bit more. And so in hopes our client has the best offer, it kind of makes it an easier decision, right?
That's the biggest thing that I do as a buyer's agent, is that you make sure that you create that great rapport with that listing agent. And I can't even tell you how many times that I've won offers because of this, because they trust you, and trust is the biggest thing as well too. So.
And then as you near, and this what I've got here, near the end of the negotiations. So something else to be prepared for. If you're in the conversation and it's you and one other buyer, and you and one other or two other buyers, it gets the back and forth starts happening a little bit more. Okay, so just be prepared for that. Just focus on the goal, focus on the property, and just know that it's good to be in the conversation, and hopefully you can get it and you have the winning offer. When it does get down to the sort of nitty gritty there, it's always tough to gauge, if you're behind, like how much more to come up and that sort of thing. So sometimes, one question that I like to ask realtors, and again, it's not answered all the time, but I say, hey, look, we're in second place right now. Maybe both offers are unconditional. By then I'd probably have that information. Look, if I brought you this price, are we doing a deal? Right? Because sometimes it's like, well, you got to come up a little bit. Well, what's a little bit? Is a little bit 10 grand? Is a little bit 20 grand? Like it's very dependent on, who's saying you got to come up a little, right? So sometimes that's a way around it, right? And then even when you do that, you have to know that the listing realtor then has to give the other buyer, a shot at it. So ultimately, as listing realtors, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everybody's best offer, right? So the people who don't get the property, they at least have some comfort in saying, well, I wasn't going to pay more anyways, right? So that's essentially what they're trying to do here. All right, moving along. What should sellers expect, right?
I feel like we maybe talked a little bit about this in there, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? They're just a different experience on that. So, so essentially it all really depends. Like how we really do it is that we're going to set the time. So say it's 5 p.m. on Wednesday. I'm going to be pretty much calling everybody that has had interest in the property, seeing where everybody stands, updating everybody, and then updating the seller as well too, because the seller is going to really want to know what's going on. This is really exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. Like Glenn, I'm sure that you know how my husband and I were the day when we were getting offers on our place a year and a half ago. I was 100% a seller, so I know how it is. So we want to discuss ahead of time of the process of how it's going to happen, right? Sellers don't know. So we're going to discuss of how it's going to generally go down. And then when it comes down to, we're going to say, okay, we're going to chat at say 5:45. I always like to put a little bit of time in between when offers are coming in, because let's be honest, there are people that are late and I don't want other people to miss out. So, and everybody has a full schedule. So we speak about an hour afterwards and we discuss how we're going to, the pros and cons of each one. Sometimes some want to meet us, we've been through a pandemic for so many years, right? So Zoom is actually a very practice thing, and on the phone as well too. So some people can't be here in person, but sometimes we do go over there as well too. It just depends on the seller. We're going to go through each offer. We're going to go through the pros and we're going to go through the cons, and we're going to go through the main talking points, which is going to be obviously the price, the dates of the offer, what conditions that they have, any, inclusions that were added that weren't the normal. Say they wanted a couch or a TV or something and so forth. So we're going to go through each one of them. Okay. And then we're going to go through and discuss what is going to be the most important aspect of this journey. Is it going to be your dates? Is it going to be every seller has a completely different journey that they're on. So it's really dependent on what we're looking at that time. So let's be honest here, majority is price. So 95% of the time it's price. So we're going to look at that. If someone blows everybody out of the water, as Glenn said, is that we are going to have a lengthy discussion on what's going to be. At the end of the day, we're here to give you information, and then the seller makes their decision on what they want to do. So it's really dependent on if we're going back to people and so forth, but we're going to be discussing the strategy. We're not going to discuss the strategy that Glenn and I do, but we're also going to know that we're here to get you the most money as possible in the most ethical way, right? So we're going to discuss what that's going to look like, and then we're going to go from there. We're also going to look at, it's always good to accept the offer that evening. You know, some people do ask, well, do I have an afternoon to think about it, or a morning, or can I sleep on it, and so forth? It's always best to be present with the offer in that day and to accept an offer that, because everybody is on pins and needles as well too, buyers as well, right? Now we have a little bit of a shakeup. Before we had subject free offers with deposits attached, and it was firm binding done. Now we have something a little bit different. So say we're accepting a subject free offer. We now have this thing called a rescission period, which is 3 business days, not including holidays and weekends. So another thing I'm looking at is that if you're looking at offers on a Friday, know that that rescission period is going to be through the weekend and 3 business days after that. So that's actually going to be 5 full days. So you really want to, the day that you look at offers is going to be very important. So buyers get 3 days to decide whether or not they want this property. If they ended up not, by the way, not wanting this property, you do get a little bit of money, 0.25%, if they waive and they say, we don't want this property anymore. We've had cold feet in that rescission period. So
and that's only that's providing if they do have an unconditional offer with no subject,
yes,
then the only penalty. But if you do have a condition and you decide not to remove the condition, then so be it.
and there's no penalty. But yeah, we're just talking about subject free offers at this point. So if it is, then that will be. So look, when you look at your offer is really important. So usually a Tuesday or a Wednesday is good. Tuesday, obviously the best, because then we know that they're going to remove their subject, or sorry, not remove their subject, going to have their rescission period. We're still learning all the lingo of how many years of saying subject removal. Now we have a rescission period. So now we know that they have till Friday to decide whether or not they want this property. So you have to be patient during those extra 3 days on top of it. And then, of course, Glenn said if there is subjects, the rescission period and subjects actually have nothing to do with each other. So if they do have a subject till Friday for their inspection, just know that, they will have to remove that subject on that Friday. That does not have anything to do with the rescission period. But remember, the rescission period was put in specifically for subject-free offers. So for if anybody gets cold feet, and we have seen a couple that have, which kind of goes into our next slide.
Yes.
Of backup offers.
Backup offers.
So let's talk about for the seller now, since I'm on a roll right now, is that, seller, why would you want a backup offer? Backup offers are great. I always encourage backup offers because you do not know what's going to happen with the first one. There's a million things going behind the scenes that you do not know and that I do not know as well too. So this is essentially going to confirm that you're going to get another offer. And say we're in multiple offers and you have a higher price than you're asking, or you have something very close of what you wanted. You want to keep the momentum. So if we go back to market and we don't take a backup offer, we're starting from square one. When we have the momentum right now, we know that we're going to get you a certain price at this time. So that's why sellers should want one, especially in multiple offers. Why wouldn't you want one? To be perfectly frank, I don't think there is any reason not to want one.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, they're good. It's nice to have a backup because it also applies a little pressure. Not applies pressure to the buyer, but kind of applies pressure to the buyer.
Yeah.
Like, hey, no problem if you for some reason back out. Like we've got somebody kind of lined up. Like it's kind of like people want it. Maybe a buyer can look at that either way. Well, if I back out, you still have something, right? But maybe if you had, I don't know, maybe if you had 10 plus offers on your property, maybe say, well, let me just throw it back out to these guys, but you're probably going to end up around the same value anyways, right? So take the backup offer if it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have the momentum as well. Even if you're not in multiple offers, a person's putting in a backup offer because they want the property. So generally speaking, you're going to get to what the price that you want faster than going back and forth with negotiating, because they already know that the first offer is already there, it's cemented in, and this backup offer is like, okay, well, if this is the price, then this is what I need to do to get in a backup position. Okay, so it just kind of speeds up the process a little bit. And you're right, it does apply a little bit of pressure to the first people. So
yeah. And yeah, just to clarify, a backup offer is the seller's accepted an offer, then they've accepted your offer as the backup. So if the buyer pulls out, then your offer immediately comes into effect.
Yes.
And that might have been self-explanatory, but just to clarify that. So from a buyer, like, why would you want to be a backup? I mean, if the offer date's on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and say the seller's accepted an unconditional offer and rescission is on the Friday, the chance of you, if there's nothing, it's only 3 days, and there's nothing else you really want to see, then just be in the backup position, because it doesn't cost you anything. So, reason you don't want to be the backup, it really depends on how much you want the property. If you've gone this far and you've been given an opportunity to be in a backup position, you clearly want the property. But maybe there's something else that's on the market that you want to see that was just listed. So you're like, well, I really want to see this, right? So it all depends. But even then, it all depends. But that's the only reason why maybe you wouldn't want to be in a backup if you saw something else. So, and we did just drop in here, this is the clause of what it looks like, of what would be in your offer. And this is simply subject to the seller ceasing to be obligated in any way under the contract of purchase and sale dated, respecting the property, including the seller obtaining a full release from the buyer, so on and so forth. So that condition for the sole benefit of the seller. Okay, so that's what it would look like. That's what makes it a backup offer.
Yeah.
Moving along here. So these are just some things to ponder, guys, some considerations. So can you be competitive? Now, this is where, like, I put this little quote down below that I say all the time. It's not a quote by me, and I've heard many variations, but try not to confuse the asking price for the actual value of the home. So going to this, can you be competitive? Right now, it's tough to know what a property is going to sell for. So yes, a strategy can be, let's list low to get multiple offers, but sometimes it's too low. And then you see, like, for example, if we're talking, let's just say like an entry level condo, and maybe going back to Galia's situation, it was listed for $499. And Britt and I immediately looked at it and we're like, $499, it's a 50 for sure. And sure enough, there was an offer date. And they ended up.
What things are listed at $499 these days? That's kind of what you come back to with the experience Glenn and I have.
Yeah. And then there was, and then there ended up being the 15 offers. Okay. So the majority of those people probably had a budget of 500, maybe 525, maybe 550, and ended up selling for 580 or 585. So it's very important to ignore the asking price and do an evaluation of the property and see what it's actually worth based on the market, not based on the asking price. You can ask $1 million for a condo that's worth 800,000. You're still going to do the same work and decide and offer low because the seller has offered way too high, right? So it goes both ways. So just ignore the asking price and do your own evaluation. And when you're getting down to the nitty gritty, if you're in the top 3 position, or if you're clumped up with a few people or just one other buyer, and you're neck and neck here on price, just know that if you don't get it, the next property that comes on the market that matches your criteria, this one that you just missed out on, is going to be the new comparable sale. So in markets like this, we're seeing the next property usually sell for a little bit more, not always, because it really depends on the buyers who are looking that weekend or that week. And some people will get frustrated, they'll take a time out and that sort of thing. But just know that each time a sale happens, it is the new comparable for a seller. So within reason, it's the new comp. So the next time this happens, you might be spending a little bit more than that if you have it, of course, right? So point being is sometimes when you're down near the end, if you've got it, go for it, right? Because real estate is long-term, guys. It's long-term. Okay. So you're going to have this property for at least 5 years, 3 to 5 for sure, right? So it's all going to, you're not going to really be sweating that extra $5,000 or whatever it might be, right? Okay, so nobody wants to compete as a buyer, and sellers, if you do end up in a multiple offer situation, you're going to do quite well, but there's a good chance you're going to turn into a buyer, right? So it can be very frustrating.
True.
Right. So it's like, yay, what a number. And then it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm getting, Brittany and I,
Now I'm a buyer.
really well, and then near get priced out. Right. So careful what you wish for. Right. It would be amazing if we had more inventory and everything was a little bit more balanced. Honestly, it would be. But if you want to competition as a buyer, don't buy. Right. But that's not a good idea. Right. Especially if you have a solid job or secure job in the capital, like get into the market. Real estate is, again, it's a long-term investment. It's a long-term hold. Okay.
I would say don't get in your head too much, just because I feel like these multiple offers, it's kind of like a mind game, right? And going, oh, if I don't get it, I'm going to be so disappointed and I don't want to play this game. But unfortunately, with a lot of entry-level properties right now, is that going into the townhouses or going into the apartments or going to a detached house in the entry level, that's where we're seeing a lot of the multiple offers, is that you have to get in somewhere. And believe me, I can't say one person that hasn't has regretted making a purchase out of all of my buyers and saying, they're honestly, after multiple offers are done, they're like, thank goodness we got this place how many years ago. So I think it's a really important thing to just not, I know it just, you feel like it's inflated and you feel like the hype is there and get into multiple offers and so forth. But this is the nature of the game. As Glenn said, we've been in multiple offers for our whole entire careers, and it's not going to go away. So I think, if you can get over that fact and you jump in, I think it's something that you won't regret.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, another way to avoid, we got pre-sales as a way to avoid competition. Okay, so that's depending on your time frame. Like brand new pre-sale, new launch, boom, you walk in there 2-3 years for completion, depending on the size of development. But if the development hasn't sold out and it's 3 months away from completion, or you can pick up an assignment, okay, those are ways to avoid competition. Or buy something that nobody wants. But then you got to ask yourself, why doesn't anybody want it? So something that's been on the market for a while, maybe it needs a renovation, but you're going to have to go and just figure that out. Like, okay, here's something that's been on the market for a while. Like it looks okay, like on paper or online. But you're really going to have to figure out, well, why doesn't anybody else want this? Like, what is it? And you're going to have to explore that. Right. But those are some other ways. And this last little bit here, just trust, fairness, good faith. Just trust the realtor that is representing you. Okay. We're putting trust as your representative when you're buying. We're putting our trust in the listing realtor, that the information they're giving us is in good faith and true. But that's why we also have those questions that we ask to try and extract some knowledge. And we know when something doesn't add up. Another question that you could even throw in there, if a listing realtor comes back to you and says, hey, you want to improve your offer? And you're like, okay, that your buyer will come up. You're like, okay, like where do we stand? Or, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. Make sure you ask where you stand. This is more a question that your realtor needs to ask. I think there, a couple of realtors might be watching this, but if somebody says to me, say, hey, Glenn, here's your opportunity to improve your offer. Okay. What place are we in? Well, yours is the best offer. Or, you ask them, okay, well, are we not in the first position? Okay. Because I have had listing realtors that will just automatically go back to everybody and say, if this isn't your best offer, give it to us. Because I want to take all the best offers to my seller. But if you're in the first position, then just wait until somebody jumps over you and have that conversation with the listing realtor, right? And then just understand, we're all operating in good faith here too, right? So there's a lot to take in, and things can happen real quick on that offer date. But hopefully this webinar is kind of explain what you can expect and how things go, and also obviously how to best put yourself in the best position possible. I mean, some things are in your control and some things aren't, right? But let's do everything we can that are within our control, and then decide how we're going to proceed. Britt, anything?
No, I think that covers it. Obviously, this is like the fast version of it, and everything else takes a little bit longer. But yeah, I think this is a good overview of what things look like in multiple offers.
Yeah. If anybody does have a question, you can drop it. You just drop it in the Q&A down there. But other than that, I think that's it. So yeah, thanks very much for those of you that jumped on. I know Wednesday, 11 a.m. It might not be very normal time for a webinar, but for those who aren't watching it live with us, you'll get the recording. You'll get the recording tomorrow at some point, if not sooner. Yeah, Britt, doesn't look like there's any questions from anyone that I can see here. So let's just call it a day.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, and also, guys, if feel free to reach out. Right? I mean, if you're seeing this and you don't have a realtor and you're looking to interview realtors, we are here. Okay. All right. Thanks guys.
Everyone.
Cheers.